One, in terms of homelessness, California, 50% of the homeless people in our country live in California. That's not a good record to run on. And I think she has a lot of other vulnerabilities that, that we're going to hear more and more about, and that essentially are going to make her unelectable.
Has anything that's happened in the last 3 weeks, from the debate to the attempted assassination, and I'll come to that separately in a moment, to Biden quitting, has any of that changed how you view your role right now?
Well, I would say that the election now is very dynamic. So, and, which offers all kinds of opportunities for me, but I really, I try not to predict the future because I just try not to spin stuff. So, we're doing what we've been doing from the outset, which is to fight for the American middle class, fight to end the chronic disease epidemic, fight to end the war machine, fight to end this corrupt merger of state and corporate power, talking about and fight to get the deficit under control. All of these issues that none of the other candidates are talking about. I would say that the Democratic Party no longer has any authentic relationship with the American middle class. The Democratic Party I knew as a boy that represented cops and firefighters and working people is gone. And then the Republican Party has all kinds of problems with their own. President Trump, who got a huge boost from the assassination attempt, and I commend him for his courage and his leadership during that very, very challenging time. He announced yesterday, according to the New York Post, that he is choosing between Jamie Dimon, who's the head of Morgan, and Larry Fink, who's the head of BlackRock, as his Treasury Secretary. And this is, I think people cannot take seriously his promise that he's going to drain the swamp if he actually once again brings these swamp creatures in to run our government. BlackRock is American middle class is not fond of BlackRock, and they see, all of the machinations, its role in the war in Ukraine, where it's got not only the contracts, because it owns all the military contractors, to blow up Ukraine, all the bridges and ports and schools and hospitals, but it also has the contracts to rebuild Ukraine. And, it owns the credit card companies that are bankrupting Americans, that are charging 32%. All of the economic problems that we have, which are the result of this systematic strip mining of wealth from the American middle class and sending it upward to this new oligarchy of billionaires, it's all been orchestrated by BlackRock. And to bring them in to run the Treasury is not, I think it sends a bad signal. I think it's going to be a vulnerability for President Trump.
Robert, the last time you were on Uncensored, we had a pretty passionate conversation about the fact you were not getting Secret Service protection. You finally were given that protection, but obviously only after Donald Trump had been shot at a rally. First of all, your response to getting it, albeit belatedly.
I'm very grateful for having it. The Secret Service detail I have is very professional. I think they've made me and my family feel very, very safe. And I'm very, very grateful to the Secret Service for finally. And I think I told you at one point, Piers, we actually had repeated conversations with the Secret Service. And from the beginning, the Secret Service wanted to give us protection. Yes, and they were being denied that, and they expected us to, and they were being denied that by the White House. So they were very surprised that the White House, or DHS, Secretary Mayorkas, was not allowing. They found that they did their own assessment of me that found that I was at, quote, elevated risk. So they wanted to give it to us from the beginning, and the detail that we've got is really wonderful. I think, what's troubling to me, and I don't want to make this about me, But we've seen this weaponization of the federal agencies, of the enforcement agencies, including the CIA, the CIA, FBI, and even the NIH and the CDC, in it being weaponized for political purposes. And I just won this lawsuit against the Biden administration, Kennedy versus Biden. I just won an injunction against the Biden administration using the FBI and the CIA and NIH and CDC to censor me, to stop the censorship. But we've seen it across the board against President Trump, against other rivals of the president, in a way that I think should be very, very disturbing to the American people. Pierce, when my father took over the Justice Department in 1961 for his brother, who was then president, he had a meeting the first week where he called all the branch chiefs and all the division chairs, and he said to them, the one rule in this Justice Department is that no, we never politicize enforcement, that we never ask the question about a defendant, are they Democrat or Republican? We have a responsibility for making sure that the American people believe that in our country, justice is blind, that the enforcement agencies of our country are neutral politically, and that's the only way to maintain faith of the American public in these critical institutions of democracy. So, and I think President Biden really dropped the ball on that. I think, President Trump did too. When he was running, he was talking about, locking up Hillary Clinton and appointing a special prosecutor to do that. And, it's paradoxical that now that he's on the outside, he saw those federal agencies weaponized against him in ways that I think the entire country witnessed. But it's not good for our country. We look like a banana republic.
Yeah, completely. And when you saw what happened to Donald Trump a week ago and how close he came to being assassinated, and the full scale of how the Secret Service had dropped the ball in protecting him with this young kid with a rifle on a rooftop just 150 yards or so from where Trump was standing. Do you think that the Director of the Secret Service, Kim Cheetle, is currently testifying on Congress, should she have already resigned?
I have a lot of questions about how about the coverage, and we're hearing now. We heard this actually from President Trump. I spoke with President Trump soon after, the evening of his shooting, and we talked about the fact that the Secret Service, and he was very complimentary of his Secret Service detail and their bravery in getting up onto the stand very, very quickly and moving him off and protecting him. But even he had some questions. People on his staff told us that they had asked for enhanced Secret Service protection, and that the DHS had denied it to them, and they were comparing their situation to my situation. So I think those questions need to be answered by somebody. I wouldn't necessarily blame the Secret Service till I know more, but I think somebody bungled it. Somebody, obviously, it's obvious from the outcome that there was something going on here that Americans really need to know more about. I'll say this. I think President Trump's first reaction to the shooting, first his bravery on the podium, and then after that, at least the noises he made about unifying the country, I was very touched by that and very hopeful about that. And I don't think it's necessarily turned out that way, but I think at first, and the first 10 minutes of his convention speech were very conciliatory. And I think that's what our country needs now. It needs to be unified. When my uncle was shot, Pierce, in 1963, when he landed in Dallas that day, there were posters all over the city that said, and in fact, advertisements in the leading newspapers in the city that had a picture of my uncle and a wanted poster, wanted dead or alive. And that was an emblem of this, of this polarization that had come out of the civil rights movement, particularly at that time, and the anger at my uncle in some of the southern states, and his shooting in many ways was a product of that boiling anger. But after he died, our country came together in an amazing way. And, he'd been trying to get the Civil Rights Act passed, the Voting Rights Act. And immediately after his death, as a gesture to his memorial, as a memorial gesture to him, Congress, both houses of Congress got together and passed the Voting Rights Act. And, I really would have liked to see that kind of unity. And our country became a true constitutional democracy for the first time in its history as a result of his murder. So, our job on earth is to bring order out of chaos and turn bad things into good things. And I was hoping that the same thing would happen for our country after President Trump's, after the attempted assassination. And, I think he gave us some reason for hope at the outset. I'm not sure if it's holding.
And I spoke to him on Saturday night, and he was remarkably sanguine about what had happened to him. And I was congratulating him that he'd gone back out within a week and was back on another stage at another rally, showing no signs of being put off at all by what had happened to him, which was extraordinary. But he also expressed a hope in that phone call that Joe Biden would stay in the race as long as possible. If it does end up being Kamala Harris v. Donald Trump come November, who wins?
I never make predictions. I stopped making predictions in 2016 after I said that President Trump could never be elected president. So I've tried to be disciplined about not making predictions, and also I really try not to spin stuff. So I'm not going to make that prediction. But I think that right now it seems like it's President Trump's race to lose, but he also is capable of doing that. So I think that 100 days is our light years from now, and so many things could change between now and then, and so I wouldn't make that prediction.
The one prediction I will make is that unpredictable things will happen, because it's turned into the most unpredictable race in history. Robert F. Kennedy Jr., it's brilliant to have you back on. Please come back again when inevitably something more outlandish occurs. God knows what it will be, but I think we can pretty well be certain something will. And I appreciate you, as always, you coming on. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pierce.